Good, happy Monday evening. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this Monday evening edition of The News with Riley King. Let's begin. First up, President Trump leaving Walter Reed Hospital after 3-day stay for COVID-19 treatment. Let's take a look at some live coverage of that right now.
Staff that has been treating the president. We don't know if he will make remarks. I don't see the microphone stand that we have seen there before. And of course, social distance would be called for in order in this circumstance. So he may just simply get into the armored vehicle, onto the chopper, and then back to the White House. White House correspondent Peter Alexander is at Walter Reed right now. Peter, what can you tell us?
Well, Lester, you just saw the president's photographer exit that front of Walter Reed, which demonstrates that in many ways this is a photo opportunity that the president is planning to embrace as he exits today, an opportunity to try to say to America that he is back, as his own doctor said today, to try to project strength and to try to return to form with the campaign in its waning weeks, now less than a month before Election Day here in the United States. This has been a remarkable scene, and here I think there's Donald Trump.
President, how many staff are sick? How many of your staff are sick?
Thank you very much.
Do you think you might be a super spreader, Mr. President?
President taking no questions, but certainly a demonstration of a sign of strength, walking by himself, gently tapping the railings as he came down, but walking virtually unassisted as he now goes into that armored SUV, much like the one that took him on the tour yesterday of the neighborhood to greet well-wishers. It'll be a short ride just to the other side of the hospital where Marine One is ready and waiting for him on a helipad. And then if it is anything like a few days ago, it'll be about a 10-minute ride to the White House. The president returning to a White House that's very different. As we have noted, a number of staffers, people connected to his campaign and the Republican Party have tested positive for coronavirus, so he will be certainly confronting that. Doctors not exactly explaining in great detail how he will be isolated, what the circumstances of how he will be staying in the White House will go under these circumstances. Of course, his wife, Melania Trump, also tested positive for COVID-19. The last report we had, her symptoms were considered mild. She did not make the trip to the hospital on Friday, and as far as we know, she is doing relatively okay. And you can see that motorcade beginning to move just a short distance. There have been a lot of people who have been camped out of the hospital, many supporters, some protesters who have been creating certainly a lot of attention there over the 3 days the president has been at Walter Reed. They, as we reported a bit earlier, had been moved to the other side of the street, a little bit farther from the helipad, but they will be certainly in a position to watch it leave. They were certainly able to see it make its approach and land within the last half hour. This is obviously a very long shot camera here, so pretty fuzzy picture, but the presidential SUV making its way to the helipad. I believe Peter is still with us. Peter, the president, I think all I heard him say was thank you very much. Did you hear anything else?
No, that's all that I heard, and it wasn't clear whether the president would have any remarks. Really, it was that photo that he wanted. He wanted to demonstrate he has, as he has over the course of the last several days, that he is in form, able to work, and continues with his routine. But what's noticeable is how little we really know about his condition at this time. His doctor refusing to provide any details about those lung scans, which is significant because it would potentially be revelatory about whether he has any COVID-related effects, possibly pneumonia pneumonia. Even as he heads back to the White House, the president is taking a series of experimental antibody cocktail. He's taking an antiviral drug, remdesivir, also taking dexamethasone. That is a steroid, Lester, as we've been reporting, that is typically only used for severely ill coronavirus patients. So even as the White House says that he really has only had sort of mild symptoms, a mild bout with this, the way they tried to describe it, he is being prescribed drugs that would be used for a much sicker patient right now. To give you a sense of the scene right here, you can see some of those folks behind me. This, Lester, has been a wild scene over the course of today and, frankly, over the course of the last several days. There have been what started with dozens turning into hundreds of Trump supporters arriving here from all around this region for an opportunity to try to cheer on the man that they love, the man that they say deserves 4 more years in office. And then protesters arrived, police arrived as well. It's just really been part of what in many ways has become the reality TV presidency over the course of the last several years in the eyes of many.
Peter, we just want to know, we just saw the president climb his way up the stairs. Yeah, he just climbed up the stairs and is aboard the chopper now. One thing I noted, Peter, there appeared to be no medical staff in sight as the president left. Appeared to be simply aides and Secret Service. The president in his usual business attire, and flashing a thumbs up and a fist as he got into the vehicle. But we didn't see anyone certainly in lab coats or in medical garb.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't see any of those doctors as well, but recognize, even as his own doctor said, when he returns to the White House, he will have some of the best medical care on the planet, elite doctors surrounding him, an array of drugs and other treatments available to him right now. So even as the president earlier today said, don't be afraid of COVID, his experience is very different than that of many average Americans. So many families across this country, that of more than 210,000 Americans who have lost loved ones, will hear those words and feel like the president does not understand their pain or their experience. But all of this is clearly by design for a president who believes that the more he's talking about coronavirus, the more that is the topic at hand, the worse it is for his re-election hopes. His desire is to focus on the future, looking past this virus, even as many people, including his own public health experts, say we still have many difficult months ahead.
As we see the presidential motor pool clearing the helipad, the chopper about to leave, let me bring in Tom Costello. And Tom, you can pick up a little bit of what Peter was talking about. That the curious thing in all this is that I guess we don't have Tom. I'm sorry. I apologize. But of course, what I was going to point out, one of the curious things is the medical regimen, the treatments he's received, some experimental, some considered very aggressive for more serious cases of COVID, and that has left a big question mark over all this. And certainly his treating physician not wanting to go into specifics about what the lung scans look like, or some of the other key telltale things that doctors would look at to evaluate COVID-19 patients' condition. We know from our reporting of this disease, it can show one way at one time and then swing violently the other direction with little warning. And again, doctors say they have what they need in the medical facilities of the White House. Dr. John is with us. Dr. John, I'm playing a doctor right there, so to pick up on what I was saying about this idea that the question marks here that make us wonder if the man who just climbed in that chopper is as well as he appeared.
And Lester, a couple days ago I mentioned the word red flag, and by red flag I meant that he was getting medications that they usually reserve for patients who are severely ill. So of the medications he's getting, one of them is remdesivir. That's the one that Peter was talking about. It's an antiviral, so they give it to patients early on. So that makes sense to give patients who are mild or moderately sick at that point, because you're trying to fight it off. You're trying to actually actively fight the virus with that medication. The other one are the antibodies they were giving them, the Regeneron antibody cocktail, the monoclonal antibody cocktails they gave them, because that also gives your immune system a boost, so it's trying to actively fight off the virus at that point. But the third one they gave them, and this is the one that raised some red flags, is the dexamethasone. That's a steroid. And per NIH protocol, that should only be given to patients who are on ventilators or who are on supplemental oxygen in the hospital. And they specifically say it is not recommended for patients that are not on a ventilator, not on supplemental oxygen. But other experts are saying, at some point, sometimes, even if they're not at that stage, but they're severely ill, ill, then we'll give them that dexamethasone anyway, but it's definitely reserved for severely ill, not mild or moderate. So I think what we're seeing here is the medication they're giving them is reserved for patients who are sicker than they're telling us he is. And it's important with a steroid because if the steroid is given early on, when they're not that sick, it actually can make the patient worse. And so they're going to be very careful with that. So I think, again, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, isn't necessarily what's going on behind the scenes, Lester.
All right, Dr. John Torres, as we watch the Chopper Marine One make its way toward Washington, let me bring in Hallie Jackson right now. Hallie, as I noted a few minutes ago, he's returning to the White House, but it is not the same place that he left, as more COVID cases linked to the White House and Republican Party are popping up. What do we know about the number of cases right now?
Well, we know, Lester, the number is 14. That is the cases linked to the White House or to the campaign. That includes the president and the first lady, and it includes the White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, who today said that she tested positive for the coronavirus. We've learned today, too, that 2 of her deputies have also tested positive. The White House so far has not said how many West Wing staffers have actually tested positive so far. But I have to tell you, Lester, the White House feels different in more ways than one, right? It is fairly empty in there. It is quieter than I can remember seeing it, not on a weekend when the president's out of town, let's say here, on a weekday where there is a lot of news happening, because many staffers are working from home. Some of them who have perhaps not been directed to quarantine are doing that themselves, choosing to stay away from some of their colleagues. Some have come in. I spoke with one White House official here today. He was wearing a mask. I was wearing a mask outside more than 6 feet. But the question was, why did you still show up to work knowing that this is happening here? The argument from the White House is that they are essential workers, basically. They've been deemed essential to the functioning of government, basically, and there is some work that they feel they have to come into the office to be able to do. So we see the helicopter, Lester, on its way here to where I am on the White House. It'll land on the other side of the building from where I'm standing, on the south lawn, and then the president will head inside. I am told by a source familiar with the plans, and I emphasize the plans, that the president is expected to isolate in the residence. So that's not the West Wing. Now, that could change. Let's say in a few days, if the president is still feeling good, decides he wants to go to the Oval Office, perhaps that could change. But at this moment, that is the expectation, that the president will be in the residence. As we've been talking about it, and as Dr. John referenced a moment ago, the president coming home to the White House is not like me going home to my house in Washington or you going home to your house where you are. It is a very different experience. He will have 24/7 medical care. He has access to a full medical suite. This is fairly advanced. It is not a hospital, right? The White House is simply not a hospital, but it does have a level of care that pretty much any other American does not have access to. The question of how long the president will need to isolate once he gets back here, right? That is another question here. And we got some insight into that from the president's physician today. Now, typically, the CDC guidelines suggest 10 days for a patient from the start of the onset of symptoms. Dr. Conley said we'll be checking, the physicians will be checking the president's viral load. They need to make sure that he is not carrying a viral load, in English, that he is not contagious. That's kind of the point of this. That could happen maybe a little before those 10 days, maybe a little after. We know that the president is eager not just to get out of Walter Reed, to get out of the hospital, Lester. I spoke with one source tonight who said he is feeling cooped up and he's ready to go. He's also eager to get out, frankly, of this coronavirus bubble that he's in. He is eager to hit the road. He is eager to travel. He tweeted just before we came on the air that he is ready to hit the campaign trail. He just can't do that, though, until he's cleared to be able to travel, Lester, for safety, for responsibility, for a number of reasons. And that is something that Dr. Conley addressed today. He would not commit to a timeline, but he did say, that the proper indications do have to be in place for that. There have been, as we've noted, some credibility questions, though, given that Conley has acknowledged that he painted a rosier picture over the weekend of the president's health. We know that Friday morning his condition was spiking a fever, his oxygen levels dropped. That was not revealed to the public at the time that it happened, Lester. As you look at this shot now of Marine One flying over Bethesda, it's about a 10-minute flight, so the president should be arriving here fairly soon, just about sunset here in Washington, Lester.
All right, Hallie, thanks very much. I want to bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel and talk about what the president's life may look like, even as we march to the election 29 days from now. A patient like that, I assume you're worried about a worsening of condition, but also we just got a glimpse of what it's like for a president to move. Just that movement from the hospital to the helicopter, the number of people involved, the number of people that will receive him here. What will his ability be like to interact with others around him?
Yeah, Lester, these are exactly the questions that I think everyone should be asking, and especially the people around the president. As you stated, it's very natural. This is a president who likes to be out there. He gets energy and feedback from a crowd, but it is unusual to have a circumstance where that very crowd is something that he can pose a risk to. So the next several days are critical. Not only will his traditional vital signs, the heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen, all the things we've been talking about be monitored very closely. But Lester, you're also going to look for just changes in affect, meaning does he seem like he's a little different? We've already heard that in Bedminster, he seemed a little lethargic, and so meaning a little more tired, and we're going to be looking for those types of changes in mood or behavior. And then even weeks out, Lester, I see patients who are months out of their COVID-19 diagnosis, totally healthy, even very young, and they have kind of a post-COVID-19 syndrome, various ailments, joints and pains and headaches. So we will need to continue to keep a very close watch over the president, the first lady, any of the people that have been infected, and not make any assumptions. We know this virus is very humbling, and I think that's exactly the attitude we have to take in thinking about the president's course of illness.
All right, we saw Marine One passing by Washington Reagan National Airport, now passing the Washington Monument on its final approach and descent onto the White House South Lawn, where we fully expect to watch the president again walk out under his own power and return to the White House. You saw a second chopper there that usually flies alongside in some kind of a support role. It's now moved aside, and Marine One, designated as Marine One when the president is on board, is now making its approach, and you see it descending onto the south lawn of the White House. As we watch the chopper, we'll get another shot here shortly, but as we watch it pivot around, this means that we will likely not see much of the president, because he'll exit from the left side of the chopper. Typically what happens is we've got a pool crew that is going to video the president's stepping off the chopper and into the residence. That will get turned around very quickly and shared with all the networks, so we would expect to see that in just a few brief moments. But we will see the Marine Guard come out. We will likely see the president, at least part of his legs, maybe, as he exits the chopper. So just a little more than 72 hours from when the president departed the White House, on a day that it was later acknowledged he had a drop in his blood oxygen level and was showing other COVID-19 symptoms, the president has now returned to the White House, to the residence, where he will continue to convalesce. His doctors held a news briefing today and said they believe that he is medically able, that he's indicated all the things they look for when they decide whether to discharge a patient. We have noted there are some questions about the aggressiveness of the treatment regimen he's received that have set off red flags among some physicians who have followed this very closely. Nonetheless, doctors said they were in agreement about the decision to let him return home and to convalesce and to isolate. And of course, we don't quite know what isolate will mean in the case of the president. Noticing the doors being open right now at the White House residence. We don't know if we're going to see members of his family or Hallie Jackson. I don't know if you're able to watch with me that balcony door that just opened. Do we know if there will be a special greeting of the president there?
We don't know for sure, Lester, but given what we've seen so far with the optics of President Trump wanting to be seen, wanting to show the American public that, yes, he can, walk out on his own, he can appear on his own, I wouldn't be surprised. I picked up, Lester, at the same time as you did on the activity there up on the balcony. I will note, typically, this is not a shot that our viewers often see. We don't normally have this shot up and ready to go because we do have reporters on the other side of Marine One where the president is departing. I'm watching the bottom of the screen there to see if we can get any indication as to when the president will be stepping off the helicopter. Lester, I have to tell you, at a moment like this, these are frankly some of the most scrutinized steps that President Trump has ever taken and possibly will ever take. The shot of him coming down the stairs, tapping that railing, as you noted, you have to imagine that the president was hyper aware that the eyes of the country were on him at that moment. A slip, a grip, any of that was going to be read into, of course, by people across the country. And you have to think he knew that was going to be the case. Here, again, the optics are important. Ever since, Lester, I think back to 72 hours ago when you and I were doing this almost to the hour. I was watching this same helicopter take off the South Lawn here and head to Walter Reed. We're now watching it watching it come back now, 72 hours roughly later. And even from the very beginning of this, Lester, it was important for the White House to show the president walking on his own power, getting into the helicopter on his own power. The president is obviously not answering questions.
Yeah, I think, Hallie, we're watching the president now walking up the stairs to the residence. That's not a way he normally goes in.
No.
Again, the walking up the stairs, certainly an image that he would be eager to display, and then he will make his way to those French doors draped in American flags.
We see this shot, Lester, folks might be familiar, around Easter, at the Easter egg roll, when they come out, the president and first lady, and wave to the people who have assembled on the South Lawn. That's just to give some context where this is. People might be thinking, I can barely see the president. He looks so small on the screen. We will have a better shot of this. Again, we are using a very long lens here from far away to be able to bring this shot to you live. There is going to be a better look at the president here, so we'll be able to see sort of how he is, how he's moving. He's spending a decent amount of time out there, Lester. I'm having a little trouble myself seeing if he's still waving or making hand gestures, but he is obviously wanting to, frankly, soak in this moment. I can hear now the rotors getting louder, which makes me think Marine One is about to take off. But you can see his photographer there coming in, it looks like on the left side of the screen, with the American flags flanking him. I'm told, Lester, that as the president is isolating at the White House, we should expect and we can expect to continue to see appearances like we've seen so far as he's been spending time at Walter Reed. He's blasted out every day that he's been there. Videos on Twitter, for example. He did that drive-by over the weekend. I'm told that the president will want to continue to make these appearances during the perhaps roughly 10 days or 6 days left now that he is in isolation, to be able to send that message to the American people. It looks as though he might be waiting now, Lester, for Marine One to be taking off, and our fabulous crew out here outside the White House try to zoom in as much as they possibly can. We're going to see the president obscured by Marine One as it lifts off, and the president remains on the balcony. So Marine One will go, Lester, and then when President Trump walks back into the residence, it is a question mark of when we will see him next, as it looks like he perhaps delivers a salute there. He is the figure, of course, in the middle of the screen, flanked by those American flags. So the president will now head inside the residence with a wave to the assembled pool reporters down there. Not sure if he's saying anything, yelling, unclear, but we'll be able to tell the audio once we do get what's called, Lester, tape playback, when those reporters run that video right back into the rack room here at the White House and feed it out to us.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that the images we will see a lot, certainly on the news, but probably in other places, because it certainly plays to a narrative that the president seems to have embraced about defeating COVID-19. Keep in mind, 72 hours ago, he was taken by helicopter, a very sick man. He's back now. Doctors saying that's okay, that he's in good enough shape. But nonetheless, we will continue to watch and monitor his condition and what happens now. Again, what does isolation look like? This is a tape from just a few minutes ago. You see the president right.
Okay, you were just watching some breaking news. The president left Walter Reed Hospital, and he is back at the White House and will be going into the residents to isolate. You've been watching breaking news right here on the Riley King Network. And let's get back to our other news coverage right here on the news with Riley King. Let's get to some other news stories for you all. Record-breaking California wildfires surpass 4 million acres. Let's take a listen to that video from News Nation now.
Wildfires in California have now burned more than 4 million acres of land this year. That's an area bigger than the state of Connecticut. Fire officials say the state reached the mark today, more than doubling the previous record. That previous record was set in 2018 when fires destroyed 1.6 million acres. Just this year, authorities say wildfires have killed 31 people and burned hundreds of homes. There have been more than 8,200 fires since the start of the year, and state officials say about 17,000 firefighters are currently battling more than 20 wildfires. One of those fires continuing to wreak havoc in Northern California is the Glass Fire, which has now burned more than 63,000 acres and destroyed more than 800 structures. News Nation reporter Dan Kerman shows us how that fire is continuing to cause anxiety for residents.
Driving north through the Napa Valley, it wasn't hard to spot the thick smoke that choked the air. Across the valley, utility crews were working in that air, reconnecting wires, and cities like Calistoga remained evacuated due to the threat of fire.
We were evacuated during the Tubbs fire in 2017, and it's really sad to see this start all over again. It was terrible,
This woman and her family were evacuated from Calistoga earlier in the week. They were among those picking up lunch Friday at the evacuation center at Napa's Crosswalk Church.
We're hoping to go back home pretty soon.
Yeah, we're about my house, yeah. I think it's more dangerous now than a couple of years ago.
The fire, which burned within a half mile of Calistoga, continues to threaten that city as well as Angwin. But residents have faith in firefighters.
The last couple of nights, the dozers have been really taking it to the fire, trying to cut lines to prevent the spread. The fire's slow up there. That's been in our favor because we haven't had the winds yet.
Winemaker Bob Foley owns Robert Foley Vineyards in Angwin, which continues to harvest and press through it all. But with winds expected to come up again Friday evening, he's ready to go at a moment's notice.
We're in a position where if we've got to scram, we've got to scram.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. A new poll that is out. Poll finds Biden with 14-point lead over Trump. Let's take a listen to that video from NBC News.
Tonight, just 30 days until Election Day, Joe Biden jumps ahead while President Trump recovers at Walter Reed. New NBC polling shows Biden nearly doubling his lead with a 14-point advantage over Trump. Our first look at what voters thought of that chaotic debate.
Don't ever use the word smart with me.
That wild head-to-head also bolstering voters' views of Biden's temperament, a 32-point advantage over Trump. And the president's support slipping significantly with men over 50.
I want to give them better health care at a much lower price because Obamacare is
poll taken before the president's COVID-19 diagnosis is a snapshot of a presidential race since thrown into deeper turmoil. Trump now sidelined by the virus and unable to campaign, with some of his top advisors also stricken. His team fanning out top surrogates, virtually and in person. For Joe Biden, the campaign calendar barrels on, with a change in tone.
I'm in a little bit of a spot here because I don't want to be attacking the president and the first lady now.
But not his message, lambasting Trump's handling of the pandemic.
If that's not the president's responsibility, what the heck is his responsibility?
Biden's campaign promising to release the results of all his COVID tests from now on.
We have taken every precaution from the outset of this campaign to be incredibly safe.
Biden still set to travel Monday for a town hall with NBC's Lester Holt in Miami. And Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence readying for their only debate Wednesday in Salt Lake City.
I'll be here for the next few days preparing for the debate.
Sources telling NBC News both running mates have spent hours preparing, holding mock sessions and workshopping anticipated attacks. A once routine event now cast against a high-stakes backdrop.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for...
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that does it for this evening broadcast of The News with Riley King. Thank you for joining us for this Monday evening edition. Have a great rest of your evening, and I'll see you back here tomorrow evening for another edition of The News with Riley King. Good night and goodbye, everyone. I'll have a news report coming up in a little bit.